the 30th day of May 2023. Hi everybody, I'm Dana Durnford. You heard When Pink Elephants Fly. Ooh, the pink elephants were flying today is all I can tell you. And away they go. I miss the old days of paper airplanes. Life was simple then, and fish that sounded like crows. Those were good days. And nuclear came along and destroyed everything. Damn you, nuclear. Damn you, bastard nuclear. So we got lots to get through. Probably the most important one, though, of course, is the poll tonight. Should we stop wasting time on stupid small modular reactors and stupid fusion and concentrate on geothermal energy? Because, you know, it's real. It exists. It's been around for a long time. We don't got to make shit up. It already exists. It's equivalent, like nuclear scientists. Imagine if they come out and said, well, I don't like the cars we got, so I'm never going to drive until we invent a car that I like, but I don't know what I like. I don't like the cars currently out there. You say, well, get rid of that guy. He's crazy. That's what small modular reactors and nuclear fusion is. We got geothermal is perfect. You don't need commodities. It runs 24 hours a day. It doesn't care about the wind or the sunshine. Am I missing something, or is that just perfect? Fukushima. I can't believe we're still going 12 years later. It just boggles my mind, eh? Deadly prefectures. Deadly. So they're growing food right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation for sale. How much more crazy do you think they would be willing to go? Because nobody ever dreamt they would do something like that. Name somewhere else on the planet where they're growing food alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. Then they turned around and just dumped the soil in the ground and grew food in that. In Kuma, which is within sight of the meltdowns that are still ongoing. Oh my God. My goodness, my goodness, my goodness. We got meltdowns at Reactor 1, Reactor 2, Reactor 3, meltdowns at Reactor 4, which is right there. But yet officially they say it looks like both of those pictures are the official pictures. Where they're claiming to be to, it would be 120, 30 feet above the carnage, the stump of Reactor 4. They had 1,000 tanks in 2013, and 2014, and 2015, 2016, and 2017 they had 1,000 tanks, and 2018 they had 1,000 tanks, and 2019, you know, they had, you never believe it, but 1,000 tanks. 2020 they had 1,000 tanks, Dana. 2021 it was 1,000 tanks. Oh, by the way, in 2022 they had 1,000 tanks. Guess how many tanks they got this year? That's right, 1,000 tanks. And everything is in the tanks. Nothing got out. Everything's in the tanks. So don't worry about it. Everything's safe. By the way, I counted the tanks. I could only find 750. If you include about 300 small ones. And I mean small. Are you confused yet? Are you mystified yet? Is your brains hurting already? So nothing got out of the reactor. They got the fuel out of reactor 4, Dana. They got the out of 4. There they are, getting the fuel out of the pool. The invisible fuel pool above a building that don't exist. That's a pretty neat trick. By the way, that's reactor 3 up there somewhere. And there's the rest of it covered in the northern hemisphere. But everything is in the tanks. Nothing got out into the environment. Everything's in the tanks. Obviously, it's in the tanks. Look at it. I mean, it's got to be in the tanks. I'm so confused because I put my fate in the journalist, and that was a serious mistake. Here we go. So this picture here is China is scratching uranium 238 or 308 out of the ocean. There's 1,000 other ways to get it, but they're out in the ocean. It's like, it's so ridiculous. The whole story is so ridiculous whenever it comes to nuclear. I'm going to run through 10 or 15 of these. Top radiation experts, 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans, in adults, your parents and your spouses and your brothers and sisters and your aunts and uncles and friends and neighbors and your loved ones, your grandparents, your 50 becquerels a kilogram. Lead to irreversible lesions in the organ, which leads to 1,800 diseases. Top cancer doctor, nuclear radiation, the most carcinogenic thing that exists. No, Dana, it's like a banana, like a potato chip. It's like, walking in the sunshine. It's the most carcinogenic thing that exists. No, Dana, I'm a journalist. It's like a banana. Not just cancer, but how low doses of radiation causes heart diseases, strokes, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia, heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline problems. There's 1,800 diseases. Child risk of cancer from radiation is up to 100 times higher than adult who had the same exposure. 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested of diabetes. Try wrapping your mind around that. Dan, I thought there was only cancer. Well, no, you've been brainwashed to believe it, but it's not your own thoughts. You were brainwashed not to think of anything else. We are expecting diabetes in children from Fukushima radiation, says the head of Tokyo Area Medical Clinic. There's a whole bunch of experts, right? They don't matter apparently. Nuclear is too important. Radiation health specialists. Children with over 11 becquerels a kilogram of cesium start to see heart problems. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram, and they're only talking about cesium. And that's the gallows laugh. I'm not trying to be mean or nothing. Think about this statement here. Options for management of Chernobyl restricted areas in England and Wales. Hot zones in England and Wales, 3,000 miles away from Chernobyl. So how bad was it, Dana? Well, they closed down 9,400 farms because of radioactive fallout in Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom. But it's okay because I heard a journalist say it was like a banana. Walking in the sunshine and flying on an airplane. Over 1 million Japanese still living in nuclear wasteland. And pre-nuclear meltdowns, the limits for just gamma, cesium in particular, was 0.1 becquerels a kilogram. After the original numbers were 500,000 becquerels a kilogram, they raised it. Europe raised it to 1,100. America raised it to 1,000. So Japan looked civilized after the actual nuclear meltdowns. Think about this one. If your power plant breaks down, you believe the country will be evacuated if a nuclear power plant breaks down. So think about Canada should be evacuated, or the United States should be evacuated, or some major, or any country with nuclear. If the power plant breaks down, you have to evacuate the country, which was appropriate. There's a very long list to quantify that assertion of documentation. There's 865,000 cancers in 2012. There's one street in Fukushima City, just a single shopping street. 7 people dropped dead in that first year. Not like a stop, but in just 1 year. Do you have a street in your country where 7 people dropped dead in 1 year? By the way, Fukushima City should have been abandoned. And Tokyo, 250 kilometers away, should have been abandoned. There's your documentation. 29 million becquerels a square meter in the soil in Tokyo. And we got a big list of this through Tokyo. It's ridiculous how much radiation landed. It's ridiculous. And the problem with the radiation is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. Would you give your children industrial poison? Here, Timmy, here's some industrial poison. Come see Mommy and Daddy. We love you. You can trust us. We had a journalist tell us like a banana. Well, nuclear is same amount is 2 billion times more toxic. Hello? Planet Earth. 1,500 atoms of radioactive sulfur per cubic meter. So there's no way that every bird, every insect, every mammal, every animal, every human wasn't continuously breathing it in. And they're only talking about the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs, which, by the way, are super hot particles. Because they sprayed salt water on the reactors to manipulate you on TV. It's literally the stupidest thing we could have ever done. Unprecedented spike, 1,500 atoms of radioactive sulfur. Radiation forecasts in Japan kept secret. You know why nuclear power plants in North America have 100 plus large sirens within 10 miles of it? Well, that was because of 3 Mile Island where they covered it up. Dick Thornburg refused to evacuate people because he didn't want to cause a panic. Oh, by the way, guess what they done in Japan? They didn't want to cause a panic, so just stay there, get sick and die. Yeah, it'll take a few decades, but we'll be long gone. We'll have our pensions, and you can't connect it to us. Can't connect the 1,800 diseases to nuclear unless you accept that nuclear is not like a banana or a potato chip or walking in the sunshine. Fukushima released so great radioactive aerosols in Washington were up to 100,000 times normal. It was actually 450,000 times so-called normal. And they're just talking about xenon-133, which is brutally bad, by the way. 5,000 nuke workers suffered internal radiation exposures after visiting Fukushima. 5,000. Well, Dana, that can't be true. They had paper suits on, Dana. They're fine. That cracks me up because TEPCO says he burns 7,500 paper suits each day. 5,000 nuke plant workers suffering internal radiation exposure. Well, your suit's got to be 4 feet thick lead. We're almost got 5 more to get through. We start into the recent news cycle. Authorities hit the radioactive plume forecast to avoid evacuation. Xenon in Washington was 450,000 times above detection levels. These are absurd numbers, persisted for weeks, and you would have been saturated with the full range of isotopes. Every time I hear the cesium-137, I get pretty upset about it, and I hear it all the time. And it never stops offending me. Former Japan official, unstoppable contamination of the Pacific Ocean. Unstoppable contamination of the Pacific Ocean. No, Dana's all in the tanks, Dana. Seriously menacing U.S. West Coast. Fukushima now undeniably a global security. The word global is something we hear a lot when it comes to radioactive fallout, because that's the only emission that travels right around the planet. 40 million becquerels of iodine-131 in a single bed of kelp off California. significant amount of plutonium, named after the devil because it's so sinister, released for months, blanket the entire northern hemisphere of plutonium. That's Neptunian, sorry, which decays to plutonium, but hang on. Don't worry. I'll find it. There it is. Plutonium dispersal. And there's two more, by the way. I usually only show you that one. So I usually show you this one. Let me put it on a big screen, but there's actually two more. Two more dispersal models. That's the Neptunian, rather. So this is the plutonium, this is plutonium, and this is plutonium. So when you see plutonium, a significant amount of plutonium released for months, it was measured globally and blanketed the entire northern hemisphere, and that's what it looks like. And by the way, we got models for xenon, we got models for cesium. That's the model for cesium, but that's only based on 7 days of radioactive fallout. These are based on 27 days. These are 7 days of up to 10 million becquerels a square meter, or a cubic meter of air, of cesium-137. This next model is iodine 131. This is France's government model, the government of France's model. And this is based upon, I think, 30 days total, but you're at day 20, 21, day 22, day 23. And so you can see how bad this gets. Covers the whole planet. Okay, so there we go. Now we're almost ready to do the show, which is right there. It's right ready to go. I just got to clear my little pea brain head. And let's go back to the poll for a second. Where's that poll? Where's that fancy poll toe? Should we stop wasting time on stupid small modular reactors and idiotic fusion? Concentrate on geothermal energy, because it's real. It's real, folks. It's real. Not some fake, stupid shit. So I was out on the boat today. You want to hear a sad story? There was no excrements on the cliffs. I'm going to show you some video at the end of this. But the biggest, we're doing a baseline. We're past spring. There's no nesting species outside of the indigenous seagulls, which have been nesting here for thousands of years. The same colonies for thousands of years. And there's two small colonies. And I'll show you a video of one of them come at the end of the show. But there was no other birds, there was no other species mixed in with them. None of them were in the water, they were all on land, and that was about 4 hours ago. I got in the house about 3 hours ago, and I do believe we solved the issue with the boat. When we done the I can't remember the name of it, thank God, because that was a disaster. When we done the throttle regulator, at the same time as we done that, because that was a very expensive job, right? And when we done that, let me thank James for that, by the way, Lucid. And when we done that, I also changed the oil. I changed the leg oil. I changed the oil filter. Who knows what else I've done. And we have a brand new prop on it and everything else. And that was at the end of the year. And we took it out, and when we hit 3,000 RPMs, it started bucking the shit out of you again. The alarms were going off like it was before. But remember, right, the throttle control valve, the original one that broke down, I had cleaned it, put it back in, and it kind of worked, but not enough. And then when we put the new one in, we got rid of that problem, the throttle problem, but we had a issue at 3,000 RPM that followed us into all the changing. Turns out, I believe, anyway, because here's my take on it, is I put too much oil in the engine. At the end of last year, because I was frigged up, right? I had most of my valves in my hearts were screwed up, and I'll blame it on something. And I took a liter and 3/4 out of it tonight. So is that kind of bad? And then tomorrow, when I put the boat back in the water, I'll let it sit there with the engine down for 10 minutes, and then I'll check the oil and I'll adjust it properly, right? I believe that's what's going on this time. Because yesterday we had it running full speed, and then it was back to restricted, weird, different speeds, different RPMs, which we've never seen before. And it's more about the angle of the boat, the different angles of the boat, right? The oil is getting moved around, and you're able to get your speed up. But if you're doing it at a certain angle and you throttle it right away, you can't do it. But when I checked the oil, when we got back in, I had too much oil. I would say I had at least a liter too much oil. And I don't remember ever doing that before in my life. And it's hard to appreciate how weird it was to see that much oil in my engine. It's just, obviously I must have done it, but I can't imagine what was going through my head that I would do something like that. I think that was the issue. We had the motor going today. We're cruising along at 54 kilometers an hour. Perfect, no issues. It's only when I slow down and go to start again, speed up again, and that's because the oil, right? So if I bring the speed up slowly, the oil kind of gets centrifugal force, and I'm able to get up to speed all of a sudden. And so that's what the alarm was going off at all these, we'll move on into the story, but fingers crossed, tomorrow the boat will work fine, because it was, the throttle control valve was the issue as far as I know. Of course, this afternoon the V8, the sounder and the plotter radar wouldn't come on, no power. I fixed that before I went out. I got power back to it, but there's all these little things, there's a lot going on today. I'm just burnt out. But we've done it, and it was shocking. I'll show you the videos at the end, but let me finish it up. There was 9 pigeons, but that was right at the mouth, 3.5 kilometers out. And there was literally no other species. We've seen what we think was a cormorant almost at the mouth. But there was no excrements on the walls, because it drops straight down in the deep water, the mountains do. And so they're perfect nesting areas. They're normally covered in excrement from the birds, which is really white, very visible, right? It's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. And the same birds, every year are raising youngs, or the same generation after generation. And they were missing. We're the biggest migratory for saltwater birds on the entire planet. And went out and scoured and done a base. So we got a really good baseline of what's out there currently, right? And this is 4 days of hardcore to pull this off. So now it should go smooth after this, I hope. I'll be out again tomorrow if the weather's cooperating. I'm just busted up here tonight. So let's get through the show here tonight without going I'll show you the videos at the end of it. We'll just concentrate on the show. But I'm pretty certain that was the issue, was I put too much oil in it last year. I'm sure we all have bad days. I just can't imagine me doing something like that. I really can't. But when I checked the dipstick, that's what was going on. Because we had restrictions today too, but then again it would run full speed. I've never seen anything like it. I think it was just the overload, right? We had a lot of problems last year, a lot of breakdowns of other equipment. It happens, I'm sure. Anyway, I'm blaming myself. Let's move on. Nuclear deterrent is a bluff. Nuclear deterrent. Now, I'm not showing you all the posturing that I'm reading each week. Each week there's 4, 5, 6 people threatening that nuclear weapons, we should use nuclear weapons. From India, Pakistan, from Russia, from Ukraine, and countries, NATO countries. Vladimir Putin, so you got Russia and China. See, you need boogeyman to have the military-industrial complex. You can't have an industrial-military complex worldwide without boogeymans. But if you exterminate each other, then the military-industrial complex is out of business. Their job is to always make more deadly and dangerous weapons, not to exterminate everything, because you can't cash checks if you do shit like that, right? Scottish people back nuclear power to help meet net zero targets. That was a paper by Miles Allen. God, when does it stop? Make it stop. Every time I hear net zero, I want to choke Miles Allen. Just figuratively, of course. Miles, the degenerate Allen, he's the physicist behind net zero, Professor Shit for Brains Allen. He wrote a paper, and then it got weaponized against humanity by the military-industrial complex, also known as United Nations. Scots, which is 195 militaries, and their little pet poodle is NATO with 28 militaries. They're both very, very, very dangerous to the future of humanity. Scots back nuclear power to help meet net zero. And nobody is criticizing UN. Nobody's pointing saying, hey, what the frig is this creature taking over our planet in the background? Now they're in your face, right? It's everywhere. It's in Hollywood. It's in the folklores. We'll get through it. Most people living in Scotland. What's going on there? Is that my audio weird? No, Dana, you're weird. Well, that makes sense. Most people living in Scotland favor introducing most people to net zero. Climate change, net zero, carbon-free, global warming, and climate change. This is some weird death cult religion, right? The support include modular reactors, which are seen in some quarters, including Westminster, has the potential to boost the efforts to decarbonize. Best way to decarbonize is get rid of all those container ships. 15 of them produce more pollution than all the cars on the planet. So small modular reactors actually don't exist. Geothermal, if you really want to, decarbonize the economy, so-called, then geothermal was the way to go. Geothermal energy for the win. Come on over to the winning side. Staff car park. You're going to like this one. This is okay. This is the cuckoo of the month of May. Staff car park. This is obviously a Canadian story, and obviously it's going to be Chalk River. Staff car park unveiled as a Canadian micro-modular reactor plan location. So they're going to put it, because they can get money, they said, we'll put it in the car park. Yeah. Let's take that. Only in Canada would you hear something like this. This is right out of Popular Mechanic Propaganda #1. Just say whatever comes to your mind. We got a car park. We can put it there. Give us the money. This Ontario's batshit crazy, right? Last year they closed down 750 wind and solar farms. He said, well, because you're not reliable 24 hours a day, like nuclear. And he said, that's okay because we got $4.3 billion for storage for renewables. He said, no. We're giving that to Bruce Power. Bruce Power is going to build some storage for nuclear. Do you get it? It's absurd how evil that was. That should go down in the annals of history as holy shit. So you're going to repurpose a parking lot at the Chalk River campus as the location where they're going to build and operate a demonstration micro-modular reactor. I know what you're saying, like, no, Dana, nobody's doing shit like that. No, this is Canada. Did I mention that? There's nobody else on the planet that have the balls to come out with that. Canada's like, yeah, I can see how this played out. And somebody said, hey, there's a lot of money for small modular reactors. But he's like, that parking lot over there, put that down on the application. I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. It brings us back to the poll, don't it? Should we stop wasting time on stupid, did I mention how stupid small modular reactors actually are? And fusion. And concentrate on geothermal energy because, it's real. It's like real, man. It's real. You're like, no, it's not. Geothermal's not real. Only fusion and micro reactors are real, Dana. They're real. Look at them all. They're gloating. Look, you can see it in every one of their faces. They're actually gloating, eh? Out on a parking lot. Woo, baby, only in Canada. Only in Canada, they got that extra type of evil available. I know a lot of people have to know Dana photoshopped that. That can't be real. Nobody's that stupid. Dana's trying to make us look stupid. Hey, you don't need no help. Clarington small modular reactor bill leads to Ontario provincial government, and that's Canada again. I think it is. Nuclear partnership with Tennessee, and Poland. Is this new scale? Is that the bastard new scale? Oh, yeah. Oh, at the Darlington bankrupted Ontario Electric, right? When he built Darlington. It was like 7 times over the original price. They bankrupted Ontario Electric Company. Every time they show a picture of it, all I can think about is an ice cream container flipped upside down with a couple of holes in it that looks like windows on a big parking lot with the biggest reserve of fresh water in the background, so they got somewhere to dump their waste, right? Does that make sense? So, should we be wasting our time on small modular reactors, or should we build geothermal energy because it's actually real? It's real. It actually exists. You're like, no, it doesn't. No, it's real. It's real. Sometimes these are my better shows when I'm just burnt out, I'm roasted. I'm just sitting there and I barely, my brain is go, but my body hurts everywhere. I got myself torn apart today, but I'm pretty happy. This is day 4 of hardcore, man. All day and then do a show at night. That's a good sign. A little bit of Dana's back. Is looking at building a small modular reactor at the Clinch River site in Ontario Power. Yeah, you got to compete with the Chalk River. They're pretty crazy over there. They're going to put a reactor in the local parking lot. You know why it's a parking lot? Because it's no good for reactors. Well, they're not going to produce it. They're just going to burn money and get pensions and everything else out of it. Hitachi's BWRX 300 design, the same small modular reactor currently being built at the Darlington. No, they're not building one in Darlington. They don't even have the license for it. They have a name and a company, but they don't actually have a license into the regulatory agency. It's not real. So I got a solution, though. Should we stop wasting time on stupid small modular reactors and idiotic fusion after 50 years? Because can we move on? Can we, huh? Can we? Please, please, please. And concentrate on geothermal energy because it's easy. That's what I should have had there. Easy. Not real, but easy. It's simple. Even the nuclear scientists could probably do it. Come on, Dana, don't tell lies. Nuclear scientists can't do jack shit. Look at their history. Please make it stop. Somebody make it stop. Nano-nuclear energy. Yeah, it's another small modular reactor. Why are they doing this to us? It's not fair. Why can't we just cover regular nuclear? Why you gotta have all this shit in my cycle for? I think we should all have a picnic at Reactor 4 in Fukushima. Fuck it. Get some psychedelic. And that's Reactor 4. I'm pretty sure the picnic must be over there. Somebody passed me more of that fuel rod. So nanonuclear is from Yahoo Sports. Why is Yahoo Sports always running these nuclear stories, I wonder? So they're blah, blah, blah. The two new independent directors. She's been around the block too much. He pulled all the hair out of his head. Shared micro small modular reactors and advanced nuclear reactor ambition of a world-class nuclear tart engineering team. Well, why won't you just do geothermal? It already exists. Is that too friggin' weird or something? You're too weird, Dana. Stop being weird, Dana. Cost of new nuclear needs addressing. I'll be okay tomorrow if I don't burn out tomorrow, too. Let me see. So 3 days on the ocean. And going through the day and not see anything, only the local residential few seagulls. They were so sporadic, and that whole coastline was one big colony for all kinds of species. They all lived in harmony with each other. There's nothing out there. And then the two colonies we saw are not doing nothing. They're not fishing. There was no birds diving. There's a good baseline, and we're a little late in the year, but that's okay. We're right in the prime, and if they're not there, they're probably not coming. And they're not there because there's no food, right? Cost of new nuclear, and we're in the Atlantic now. Man. Cost of new nuclear needs addressing, says Wood McKenzie. Hey, Wood, how you doing? And parents are pretty lazy by the sounds of it, named you Wood. The biggest economic hurdle to the uptake of the latest large reactors and small modular reactors is cost. And it's cost. And they're going to need 280 gigawatts by 2050. But there was another paper that came out the same day calling for 511 gigawatts of nuclear by 2032, which is 18 years before their World Nuclear News. From 2020 to 2026, renewables will hit 4,800 gigawatts of renewables. That's equal to all the gas, oil, coal, and nuclear on the entire planet combined in just 6 years. So do you really think the renewable renaissance is going to slow down in 6 years? It's being artificially throttled now through different versions like the scamdemic and the planned war in Ukraine through the World Economic Forums. We believe nuclear should, under our global pledge consisting of 2-degree warming pathway, tripling of the nuclear capacity is required. But again, they can say whatever they want, they can believe whatever they want. It's not going to happen. There is no nuclear renaissance. There is no manufacturing. There is no big job fairs. They're not clearing land. They're not spending $500 million and doing a site. Each site is about $500 million on just the engineering of the site. High costs are arguably the biggest implement to the nuclear renaissance. No, it's just there hasn't been a nuclear renaissance for 30, 40 years. You can't just, and all the manufacturing fell apart. The diehards like South Korea and France, like if you look at France's legacy of building reactors around the world, that's pathetic. There's no other way to describe it. It's pathetic. Right, Sizewell in the UK, for instance, that's so far behind schedule, so far from being finished, and it's something like 5 times over budget, 5 times the original budget. And they're far from driving that number sky high. And then the people that are going to get power in order to quantify producing that expensive reactors, their bills are going to be nightmarish. It's going to be nightmarish. They won't be able to have a car or eat or heat the house because their bills will be so high from the prices to get their money back from this big stupid disease factory called a nuclear power plant that's going to be surrounded by farms. Glug, glug, glug. That's 3 great big... I'm feeling better now and getting my groove on here. Haven't got time. Nuclear techniques for better nutrition. I think that was the International Atomic Energy Agency. And they frig with your food a lot with nuclear, and you should be worried. You should be scared, trust me. Nuclear repository site near Carlsbad, on track for the most waste shipments since 2014. Incident. So on Valentine's Day 2014, they had a meltdown of gloves and tools and that. Okay, well, they can't melt down, Dana. Well, I guess there was something in there that they shouldn't have put there, right? Because that's what was supposed to be there. Nuclear legacy waste. And I covered it, and they took a clip out of the video that I done and put it up on KRQW or whatever it is, or Q4 or something, in Albuquerque, and called me a conspiracy theorist. Even though the stuff they used in the clip, I was 100% right. And I backed it up with the documentation. I covered it probably for 2 weeks, right? And after 10 days, they tried to go back down because they had a truck fire originally, a salt truck. One of its tires caught fire, and they abandoned 55 football field-sized caverns for 10 days. Oh, and the site. And a bunch of people had to go to the hospital because of a truck fire. It was only a tire in the 55 football field-sized caverns. A football field pitch is 300 by 100 feet. And it was very confusing. And so after 10 days, they couldn't go back down now because apparently now they had a radiation leak and they don't know where it's from. So he spent $6 billion cleaning the site up and digging new holes in the ground and continuing to stuff the legacy nuclear waste from the Manhattan era from the national laboratories, like Los Alamos National Laboratory. They blamed that on a mispackaged drum of waste from Los Alamos. They said they used the wrong kitty litter, actually. And I was furious for months after that for them saying something like that. You didn't, like, we have the videos, we have all the documentations, we have all the clips, and we went through the whole thing methodically, you know, to the details, the minutiae of the minutiae of the details of the details. An accidental radiological release in 2014 contaminated a portion of the facility that led to closure for 3 years. So we've only contaminated a portion of the facility, but it closed it for 3 years. The air filtration system, 9 years later, is still not fixed because it's too radioactive. A $400 million rebuild of the ventilation system. The ventilation system is radioactive. Excuse me. This was supposed to be a pilot project, the waste isolation pilot project, not pilot plant, pilot project. And slowly they start calling it a plant. And then they called it the nation's only waste repository. When it's neither, it was just supposed to be an experiment to see how waste hold up buried in salt. They should have put Elvis Presley's Rolls Royce down there too. See how that held up in all the salt. Does nuclear have a future in energy? No. Why are you showing pictures of farms and nuclear power plants all the time in the media, I wonder? Well, because they're all surrounded by farms, Dana. Oh, that makes sense. View from Israel, could Netanyahu attack Iran's nuclear program? Well, let me see, they nuked Iraq's nuclear program. They went in and struck that. They went in and struck the one in Syria, was it? Or Libya, I can't remember. And I got no excuses, it's just been a long day. Nuclear moratorium bill amended. Is that Illinois'? New language could mean revival of a dead nuke disease factory. Nuclear power plants are disease factories. They're always hemorrhaging radiation from the fuel pools. Approval of amendment to a bill which could lift a moratorium on nuclear power plants construction. And Chicago-based organization Post-Proliferation of Nuclear Power calls the bill amendment a bait-and-switch tactic because discussions of the bill until May the 19 hearing were about small modular nuclear reactors, which coincidentally, we got a poll tonight about small modular reactors. It's a total coincidence. Should we stop wasting time on stupid small modular reactors and idiotic fusion and concentrate on geothermal energy? Because, you know, it's real. It's real. It's friggin' real. It's real. Did I mention it's real? Anybody? What do you got?
Hey, pal. You just blowing from Stupid Town?
Yeah, I did actually. Thank you. Give me something silly. There we go. That helps. I feel all giddy now. Let's do that. Under current law, no nuclear power plant may be constructed in Illinois unless there's a method for the permanent disposal of the endless nuclear waste. Well, the problem with nuclear waste that most people can't comprehend is nobody's going to come show up and fix it for you. You're on a clock. And living in fantasies is not a solution. And that's what we got for years and years and years, is this fantasy. It's all the nuclear in 1,000 fuel pools is still split in the atoms. So they put it underwater, and the atoms are still being created. They're sucking up the water, but they're heating the water. They boil it off about 120,000 liters out of each fuel pool each day. And that's 1,000 plumes covering the planet each day being created. It never goes away. It's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light, almost at 286,000 miles per second, almost at 300,000 kilometers per second, every second. Interpreted to apply to an already shuttered plant, then the plant could be restarted without the need to use advanced nuclear reactor technologies. Relicensing is potential difference. They've never done this before, by the way. They close down these reactors first after like 1,000 psi, at a very high pressure, and they're brittle from gamma shines and X-rays and neutron bombardments and beta rays, and you have to close them down because you're destroying the very fabric of the material on the atomic level. It's very it's known as embrittlement, but it does it to all the infrastructure. 90% of the site is bombarded with neutrons, and we've done there was a study came out last month, 5 weeks ago, here in Canada, and they were looking for anti-neutrinos 150 miles away from a reactor in Ontario and 1.25 miles down in the rock. So the nuke plant had to create these anti-neutrinos, and they were able to use pure water, and when the anti-neutrinos hit the pure water, and they're traveling past the speed of light, by the way, it creates these little flashes, these little lightning strokes in the water that is visible. And they were able to determine if there was a nuclear power plant within at least 150 miles of them from 1.25 miles underground. These antineutrinos are created. So you have to wonder when you're talking about neutron bombardments, beta shines and X-rays and gamma shines and everything else, you got to put that in, you got to be worried about that. Not only that, all of these disease factories are surrounded by farms on top of it. Oh yes, Canada. Canada and the U.S. to cooperate on used fuel management. What the hell are we talking about? The Americans don't manage their fuel. Canada was captured by the nuclear industry in the 50s and 60s too, but we really lost it. We never had a chance, apparently. And now they've been so firmly entrenched in the medias and the universities and the judicial system and everything else, the monetary system. They're really like cockroaches. And so, look, the Nuclear Waste Management Organization was created by the industry itself, for the industry. It's the epitome of stupid to let them do that. They were given $24 billion 18 years ago to come up with a solution. But the problem is, all nuclear waste is splitting the atoms. And this is the high level stuff in particular, is splitting atoms. And so you can't contain it, is the problem with it. You have to vent everything, which means ultimately you destroy the whole planet. Even if you've never had a meltdown, you will ultimately destroy the entire planet. Because the emissions never go away. They're pulsing energy every second for millions of years. Now, the statement affirmed consent-based sittings for used nuclear fuel. This is the trick they're using. They'll come into a community area and say, we want to put fuel here, storage. We're going to throw money around. They're going to give some sections free money, no strings attached. And so and then that's to buy over their consent, is allegedly, right? It's a bribe. But it's not officially a bribe, but it's a bribe. And there's no strings attached. You're going to give me a couple $1 million, no strings attached? No strings attached. And so they ingratiate themselves into the community, but a lot of the community is rejecting them. Now, they'll buy, in their case, they bought 1,600 acres of prime active farmland in Ontario. They want the farmers all around to keep farming, including that spot, while they're burying nuclear waste there. But we're not going to do it without a referendum. The only referendum that is promoted in the history of Canada is nuclear referendum, because they know you're going to say no. But They also caused this incredible divide in the community by throwing money around. They're guaranteed with a no vote, right? Oh, well, we can't put a repository here. We'll have to go look at other places. We'll have to do all kinds of studies. And it's going to take another 5 years. And then we're going to have another referendum. And guess what's going to happen? They're not looking for a solution because they go 1,000 miles away and do everything and start putting it underground where it's not splitting into the atoms into the environment. But no, that's what they want. I know that might sound crazy if you're not familiar with the topic, but you got to realize these places are surrounded by farms as far as you can see, and that's going to be contaminated all day, every day, and it's going to be shipped indiscriminately throughout your communities, and there's 1,800 diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries that you better start worrying about. United Nations seeking young future leaders, young, dumb morons, lackeys, zombies to join the new global training program for world-free of nuclear weapons. But the United Nations have councils full of countries with weapons. They used weapons, like United Nations went into North Korea after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan had to move out of North Korea because they lost the war. And they had occupied North Korea for 50 years before Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So then all of a sudden, United Nations shows up and a so-called police action. United Nations went to war against North Korea. They used more munitions than the entire World War I combined on tiny North Korea. They used so much napalm, they actually burnt down every house in every community in the entire country. They destroyed the entire infrastructure, and they got land, sea, and air embargoes for 70 years. And yet, there's still a boogeyman. How is that even possible? Because without a boogeyman, you can't have a military-industrial complex. And so the media feeds you that all the time. They're going to get you. They got the nukes. The Americans already nuked us. I mean, just Castle Bravo was 1,000 Nagasaki because that was a plutonium bomb. It was equal to 1,000 Nagasaki bombs going off at the same time. That's a nuclear war. If two countries fire off 500 Hiroshima and Nagasaki-sized bombs, that's a nuclear war in everybody's book, right? But if they set it off and call it testing, that is not a nuclear war. What are you, fucking stupid? The radioactive fallout is the same thing. Doesn't matter if you fired in anger or not. And so the Soviet Union set off 3,800 Nagasaki bombs in just one of their tests. Right, it was, I don't speak Soviet Union, but it was like Bomba or something. It blew windows out 700 miles away, incinerated everything within several hundred miles. Every animal, every creature. And I always get disturbed when I see United Nations targeting kids, and we see it all the time, of course, but it disturbs me. They're firmly entrenched into our schools and universities. They infiltrated it, and now they consider it their cherry trees. They just go pick whatever they want at the institutions and then mold them to be little demonic demons like everybody before them at the UN. General Electric Hitachi intends to sell Valicio's nuclear center in Sunnol. Yeah, good for you. The 1,600-acre facility by transferring the site to a recognized decommissioning expert like Northstar, we've covered many times, we can continue meeting our near-term requirements. Listen, they've never really repudiated any site worldwide. They allegedly done the best they could, but you can't get back what you already released into the biosphere, right? And we're talking absurd numbers. Operation Smiling Buddha, the story of India's first nuclear test in 1974. Smiling Buddha. So they took some. Imagine if we had a nuclear weapon called Smiling Jesus or Smiling God. And they incinerated all kinds of peasants, by the way. And then the waste they left behind has destroyed communities now for many decades. Oh, jeez, not this again. Non-binary, it's them or they or those. You can't call them it or him or her. It's them or they or those. They're a little bit of everything, except was arrested for being a fugitive for justice. He was in charge of nuclear, or it or them, or because he's got multiple personalities apparently. And he probably stole that dress from, what the hell is it? It was interesting because when he showed up in court, he was in a suit, three-piece suit. None of these antiques. Well, he's got a double now down in Australia. 16-year-old kid now is being utilized to bludgeon people. Georgia plans photo is $35 billion boondoggle. We need a new and better solution for a carbon-free grid. Which is, you can blame United Nations for that particular narratives, right? They're all easy traceable, too. What will happen when China strikes Taiwan, when Iran acquires nuclear weapons and attacks Israel? You really think that's how it's going to work out? They're going to get the nuclear weapon. Now we're going to get Israel. That's ludicrous to suggest. And Russia's, they need, like, there's 49 American military bases on the borders of Iran. 45. Or 49. And all of them got chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons plus standard munitions. The renowned think tank CSIS, Center for Strategic International Studies, which has close ties to the American administration. Now, we've heard a lot, I've covered a lot of this over the years, of think tanks that were completely entrenched in administrations. They were ex-administrations set up these so-called, and they call themselves think tanks, but instead of, and we've seen, like, they've had 1,000 recommendations for the American militaries, and they, like, adopted 700 plus of them or something in the first couple of years. That's not influence, that's a secret government. The stupid UAE hosts the idiotic International Atomic Energy Agency workshop on nuclear security for major public events. Because major public events, like the Indianapolis 500, for instance, and these big events, they're global events. And it's a perfect time to brainwash them into the nuclear propaganda machine. They're not going to win, but it's very effective at keeping the idiot machine alive. The looming uranium shortage. There is no shortage. Because the nuclear is dying. They don't need it anymore. Chalk River hooked up with the Space Agency to bring high-tech shielding for astronauts. It's really despicable that the site of the world's first nuclear meltdown has never been held accountable. All he done was buried it on the spot, too, on top of that. Will integrate advanced materials and technology to astronauts that it has signed a partnership with the Canadian Space Agency. That's hilarious. Canada got a space agency? It's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous. Canadian Nuclear Division, Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, Chalk River National Laboratories will integrate its advanced material and technologies to astronauts. These people are pathetic. Like, if you look at their legacy, they're unbelievable scum. How they like what they've done to the Great Lakes from the releases from the CANDU reactors is it's horrific. And the intakes for like Montreal and for Ottawa, or for Toronto, is right alongside of the Darlington and Pickering releases where they release it, radiation to it. And the numbers we're talking is like 16 million trillion becquerels per year. It's like the numbers are, what the hell are we, how is that even possible? But the Canadian Space Agency, I kind of surrender when I see stuff like that. It's like, I don't even care. Good for them. Most of it never comes to fruition is what we learn around here, right? But it's pointless to come out and pick a fight with them because it's mostly what we notice with Chalk River National Laboratory. They do a lot of posturing. This was a good story. Not at all reassured by the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. That's a Canadian. Recent advertisements would suggest we should all feel confident in the Nuclear Waste Management Organization has the solution to safely bury highly toxic radioactive waste at Revel Lake west of Inglis. Like, they're going to have a referendum, so that's a no. Why not build it 1,000 miles away where you don't have to have referendums and get on with it? Well, because the agenda is to release it into the environment at constant emissions, because everything is splitting the atoms. They got something like 5.5 million bundles of fuel rods to get rid of because they don't have any. Everything is hemorrhaging it into the environment. Why not? Who cares, right? Joanna, who has a career in environmental remediation, has in the past shown in large, expensive ads underwater, shifting water through her hands, stating, "Through our environmental monitoring program, I listened to and learned from water to find ways to protect it for generations to come." Now she has moved on as the site director for Nuclear Waste Management Organization in Inglis. And these ads feature Dr. Bob Hanner, a professor of integrative biology at the University of Guelph. And these people got nothing to do with nuclear. Don't make me feel more at ease having these two people tell us they are here to protect our watersheds for thousands of years to come. Dr. Hanner is not a geologist, so how his name in these ads is relevant, I don't know. The science-technical issues at the heart of burying nuclear waste are a geological problem, not a biological problem. And the ad states Dr. Hanner's work and life are dedicated to protecting our freshwater ecosystem. So that begs the question, why work for an organization that wants to bury an extremely toxic waste in the north and abandon it, if that was true, see? So brilliant. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization talks about its long-term plans for managing highly radioactive waste, but anyone who's taken time to read the nitty-gritty details understand its plan is to bury the waste in a site will eventually be abandoned, not managed. And that's an astute fact, or observation, I should say. The simple fact is the vertical shaft repository they propose does not allow for any type of management or retrieval should it migrate into our ecosystem. Waste simply will be abandoned. So Joanna and Bob can tell us anything they want, and for the reasons they can do that is their time on Earth is limited. And they will be long dead and gone before they have to answer for any environmental disasters that can occur. And that's 100% true. That's unbelievably, unimaginably true. Why is the amount of public money being doled out to any community confidential? Why is it confidential when the Nuclear Waste Management Organization is a group funded by the nuclear industry, and the nuclear industry is funded by the ratepayers who pay their electric bills? That's public money. If Joanna is there to help answer questions, be transparent to where our money as ratepayer goes, now is their time to step up and let the public know. In a related matter, in May 2021, I asked Nuclear Waste Management's office in English how much money has been given to the Ojibwe Nation since they were first approached regarding establishing a nuclear dump in their traditional territories. I was told the information is confidential. And then 3 weeks ago, I sent Vince Polka, Nuclear Waste Management Organization's English Public Relations spokesperson, the same request, and I've not received an answer. So why is the amount of the public money doled out to the community confidential when it's the ratepayers that are paying it? Why should it be confidential? That's a great statement. Well, because if they got to be accountable, then there's a lot of people going to jail, and they can't buy off key. They're hoping to buy off key positions, right? Russia's fake nuclear disaster in Ukraine. That was a really interesting one. They blew up a British ammo facility in Ukraine. He said even if the report was true, there would be no nuclear disaster because the rounds don't pose any radiation threat. What a scumbag to say something like that. The munition has already gone through a chain reaction. You can't extract the radiation from the material. That's why the material is so hard, is because of the radiation. Right, and it's still going to be contaminated with technetium-99 all the way to uranium, plutonium, and everything else. It's already gone through a chain reaction. So the story was about that last sentence right there. Look. Pretty despicable. That's nuclear. And it's not acceptable. There's no way to justify this as acceptable. Bruce Power contracts Shoreline Power Group for remaining micro reactor. I don't even know anymore. Hang on. Bruce Power is Canadian. Yeah, for micro reactors, I guess, is it? Fuel channel and feeder replacement. I'm sorry. Yeah, fuel channel and feeder replacement for the reactors. 1.3 billion Canadian. Bruce Power is disgusting. It's despicable. What a despicable organization. Missing seals detected at Unit 3 of Finland's Olkiluoto nuclear power plant. What? Breaking? They're 14 years behind schedule, for God's sakes. They're how many billion over budget? I lost track. They're 14 years behind schedule, and everything's still breaking down. Wonderful nuclear is reliable as a broken tooth. Missing seals in 29 of the 108 connectors. Man, nuclear is just... I never get bored covering nuclear. It never disappoints me for what the fuck were they thinking. U.S. supports opening a NuScale's Energy Exploration Center in Romania. NuScale, which is actually the Department of Energy, United States, disguised as NuScale. They're former government workers, right, that created the NuScale 18 years ago. And they're degenerates. Holy shit. We've covered them so much. They don't even have an actual design in. They don't have an actual design in to the regulatory agencies. You're talking about 1 million pieces of paper. And everybody's going to take one, they said. All the industry does is hype itself. It's just... Why are we talking about small modular reactors like NuScale when we can have shiny, geothermal energy. It doesn't need gas, oil, or coal, or nuclear. No more commodities. Plug and play and walk away. And you can just recycle the same water over and over and over and over contained. Should we stop wasting time on stupid small modular reactors and fusion and concentrate on geothermal energy because it's real? Should we? Huh? No. Let's wait. Let's get memorandums of understandings for something that might not exist for another 1,000 years. Let's do that. So they did. NuScale Energy Exploration Center. Exploration. So it's a big money grab, and there's money allocated to other countries, friendly countries. So NuScale, the government, the Department of Energy is going to go to those countries to steal money from the Americans. That's all that is. In Romania. They got 1 million scams and another 1 million on the shelf waiting to get used. That's how you would describe nuclear on a good day. Or a bad day, I should say. 10 new nuclear reactors are needed, starting with a new build in Darlington site. Canada. There's zero possibility they're going to build a reactor in Canada. It's zero. They don't have the manpower, they don't have the supply chain. It takes 1 million companies, right, of materials to build a reactor. The Savannah River site, just for the mixed oxide facility that they were trying to build, when they canceled it, billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars later, which is illegal, by the way, in Canada and the United States, these mixed oxide fuel facilities. These are super disease factories. Everything is a hot particle right after you put it through the chain reaction the second time. There's levels of stupid, and they've managed to conquer all of them. Never mind. Let's get through this. Is shutting down nuclear disease factories a mistake? No. And there's so much literature, right? And it's not literature, it's just that propaganda being recycled over and over and over and over. It's truly interesting because you don't see any new ideas. They don't have anybody in the nuclear industry that the world can relate to. And so they brought in Elon Musk and Bill Gates as their poster childs. And they're literally the worst poster childs imaginable. It's such a stupid industry when you look at it. But it's a very dangerous industry. Germany's paying less for electricity now that the nuclear is gone than they were when they had nuclear. Won't be long before he conquers it. We have no reason to be against nuclear energy other than prejudice and stupidity. Well, after Chernobyl, they closed all the freshwater commercial fisheries in Switzerland. They closed 9,400 farms in Ireland and Scotland, United Kingdom, 3,000 miles away. If that's not scary, what the fuck is? I apologize. I didn't mean to swear. Obviously, I'm getting tired. A long day. Let's just finish this up and play those videos, and then we'll go early night. Engineering students set to study nuclear power policy during 9-week DC internship. 9 weeks. I really dislike them going after students, but when I look at some of these people, I get it. They were innocent till they joined the nuclear industry, and then they became monsters shortly after. Japan's Jap lawmakers denounced nuclear wastewater plan. I mean, they haven't stopped hemorrhaging into the ocean. There's nothing in the tanks. Tanks were all built at the same time. They were built to manipulate you and deceive you and coerce you into acquiescing to their scam. And most people have fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. Hook, line, and sinker. Canada selects a site for the first micro modular reactors, which brings up an interesting idea, because I had a poll that actually covers that topic. Because it's like a micro reactor, small modular reactors, can be replaced by geothermal. And way unbelievably quicker, unimaginably quicker, astoundingly quicker. Should we stop wasting time on stupid small modular reactors, idiotic fusion, and concentrate on geothermal energy because it's actually real, Should we, I'm going to go there. Oh, yeah, that's the same one. That's the one with the parking lot in Chalk River. That cheers me up whenever I sees it. Like, it confirms that these people are just morons. Look at them all there, too. Trying to, you got a military there on top of that. Man. Nothing says I have a worthless life like nuclear. Pursuing nuclear weapons makes nations less, not more secure. Right? Because now you got a big target on your back. You're an opponent, right? So you got to be dealt with. Almost 1 in 10 shipping executives expect nuclear propulsion within the decade. Almost 1 in 10 shipping executives. How many shipping executives can there possibly be? Not that many. Let's go talk about Sam. That always cheers me up. Former freak of nature nuclear waste official arrested as a fugitive for justice. Why did they put this guy in charge of nuclear waste? Because you wouldn't look at nuclear waste if you saw that coming at you. Like, okay, just do whatever you want, man. Just don't look at me again. France refuses to outlaw Russia's uranium. Because when they banned gas, oil, and coal from Russia, all the United Nations had to go ahead and ban it at the same time to punish Russia, right? There's 59 other wars going on at the same time. I give a fuck about them. But Ukraine, this caused inflation worldwide in 3 days flat. Let's make everybody impoverished, all the impoverished families to breaking point. No, this is an agenda. And Paris has no intentions to pull out from the reprocessed uranium agreement with Russia, which is the HALEU fuel. They can't get it anywhere else. Russia figured it out. But at what price? Right? Because they done it at Mayak. And if you look at Mayak's legacy, which existed from the Soviet days, and the accidents they had there and the Tetra River way back in the day, it's frightening. Putin is angry. Video shows Ukraine destroying nuclear-capable howitzer. Well, NATO is supplying, which, if you look up NATO's 28 militaries, are supplying weapons to Ukraine. You just can't give them the weapons. You got to teach them how to use it too, right? So it's big money we're talking about, all the Javelin and the Scots and the shoulder-launched heat-seeking missiles that have been sent. The numbers are extraordinary. Creepy, absurdly creepy Bill Gates. We'll be building better fusion reactors for 10 million years. Well, you don't need fusion. You need geothermal. Why would you build fusion? Why would you waste time on fusion when you can have geothermal that already exists? Why would you put all your precious metals into something that's not going to exist? Nobody pays attention to nuclear. Nuclear is the biggest threat to humanity. Nobody's paying attention. Oh, there's nuclear. It's too confusion. Yeah, and it's not an accident, by the way, there's confusion. Helicopters seeking radioactive material to fly over IMS ahead of race day at Indianapolis 500. Is that what this one is? Which I was speaking about earlier. Yeah, it's the Indianapolis 500, I think. Yeah, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Because you got a couple of billion people's eyes on you, and that's real propaganda. And they can't find Fukushima, but they can find the terrorists, Dana. Well, they're the terrorists, aren't they? The only reason it exists is because the terrorists created it. Drones fly low and slow for radiation detection. This is Sellafield, I think. As if this was some landing on some far distant planet. That's the way they kind of wrote this story. As if these people were just geniuses beyond imagination. Well, like, once you go into the heavy radiated areas, your drone gets sick and dies right away. That's the history of nuclear. Electronics won't work once you, and they got so many places at Sellafield where humans haven't been for decades, and you can't go. It's lethal doses. And these places are decrepit after all these decades, and nobody even knows what's inside of it, outside of you're not going to come back out if you go in. Xeno Power gets $30 million to build radioisotope power satellites for U.S. military. I was counting on them to be scumbags, can't we? That can maneuver without having to worry about running out of fuel. That's the problem with the military. It just doesn't know how to be. So NASA's planetary mission. NASA's such a disappointment, isn't it? Used RRP fuels for plutonium-238 isotopes, but that's in short supply for some reason. And not commercially available, thank goodness, I should say. Department of Energy produces only enough plutonium to support key NASA missions. That's going to come back and haunt us. And like the nuclearproctologist.org I'm a think tank. That's what my organization is. I'm a think tank. And we advocate no nuclear in space because it's anthropogenic, man-made. We don't create these elements from the sun or from the solar system. These are man-made. That's why they call them man-made. So now they're telling we're doing strontium-90 as a power source. So that should frighten you because for every cesium-137 produced, there's 100 times more strontium-90, which is a bone seeker. Right? Strontium-90 didn't peak for the first 1,000 days before it peaked. And then it peaks for tens of thousands of days. Tens of thousands of days. So for every 137 produced, there's 100 times more strontium-90. Why is that important, Dana? Well, because a plume of 137 was at around 1 to 10 million becquerels per cubic meter of air. And so you have to multiply that by 10 to get the strontium-90 that was in the same samples. But, and send these little nuclear-driven satellites of strontium-90 into space, and every once in a while they blow up in the upper atmosphere, and then that ends up destroying the ecosystem for many, 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 many centuries, and adding to the pile of stupid already existing. The 25 employees based in Seattle and in Washington, D.C., and we see so many of these nuclear companies concentrated in these areas, and these are bastards is the only way to describe them. They really, truly are They piss me off, these people in those areas. Generations of them now. And they are the real scum. CNNC launches test platform. This is China, National Nuclear Corporation. Test platform to extract uranium for seawater. Uranium from seawater, folks. I almost lost my mind when I see that. Very disappointing. The ocean contains about 4 billion tons of it. Once you go down and extract the uranium from the 30 million one-ton bags they got in Fukushima, they picked up from nuclear fallout. Nucor considers deploying NuScale small modular reactors. This is a steel furnace mill. Did anybody bother to mention to them that they don't actually exist, that they could do geothermal 20 or 30 years quicker? Like they can have it up and running in 6 months instead of 6 years or 10 years? Should we stop wasting time on stupid small modular reactors and fusion and concentrate on beautiful, wonderful geothermal energy because it's real, huh? Is that stupid or am I stupid? I'm just going to play little videos from the day. Nothing fancy. But you're going to see the boat clipping along at 4,500 RPM. That's pretty cool. Oh. Hey, Dana, why don't you just screw this up a little bit more than normal? Oh, great. Bear with me. I wasn't supposed to go that way. That's how you get lost. Don't worry. Let me fix it, make it all better. You can probably see it back there in the mirror. Got a perfect day. And I went to change the filter for the gasoline. Couldn't find a filter. I got to go to St. John's, to the big city. Go to the big city. That's the filter where I was just talking about. But I couldn't find it. I've been looking for it all over the place. Wow, beautiful day for this. Today. Tide's coming up. It was either to leave this morning at 10 a.m. or 9 a.m., get it in the water by 9 a.m., or I had to wait because the high tide was at 11 a.m., 11:08 a.m. You got to wait for 2 hours for the tide to get high enough because of the way they build their ramps. Quite a few of the wharfs here, you can't put a boat in the water at low tide, including a brand new $5 million wharf. Well, it's a few years old, but a $5 million wharf where they screwed up the launch of all things to screw up at a $5 million wharf. And that was a few years ago. They still haven't fixed it. And I tore my axle off the trailer a couple of years ago on that ramp. So I won't use that ramp anymore. Look at that. That's today. And so those, they should be covered in excrement from birds. Because it's, we're way into the egg season, right? And so there's nothing jumping, there's nothing flying, there's no excrements on the walls. It's literally silent out there. This was quite amazing. Now we found a couple of small colonies of seagulls, very concentrated and very sparse, that have been there for thousands of years. And I'm just going to switch over so I can zoom in a little bit on this stuff. So you can see the birds. See the birds up there? Seem scattered. But there's no other species there. None of them are flying. None of them were in the water. This is around 5 hours ago. And there's nothing down on the shoreline. So It's I've never seen just seagulls. So this is a small colony, and that DNA's been there thousands of years. Now they're right across from a community. There's a community right behind them, or across from them. We're on the inside of Ferguson Island. And so a few of them started flying when I pulled in there. But it was really interesting not to see any other species. So a total of a 3.5 kilometers shoreline was just there was a few seagulls in, like, because you're in a harbor, but it's a big long harbor, and my engine wasn't working the way it's supposed to. But now I think I figured it out, because it looks like I made a common mistake where I put too much oil in the engine, and I really have a hard time accepting it, but I must have, because it was on the dipstick. Dipstick's not going to lie. And I took it out the night before I came in the house. And then I took out too much, and then I'll just top it up once I got it in the water tomorrow and put the engine down. So this was the baseline of this area. And so that's a great test area, but we're the biggest migratory spot on the planet. And if there's nothing there, if there's no excrements on the rocks, then the migratories didn't show up. I need to get out there. Tomorrow is the only day in a long period where you got a single low tide, and it's going to be in the middle of the day, so that's kind of perfect. Ideally, but you can't launch at a low tide here. That's a big problem. And so you got to make sure that you're back in before the tide gets too low to pull the boat out of the water. And so I need to get out there and establish, 'cause we already know what the result is. We got to go out and actually prove it, right? That there's no sea urchins, no mussels, no shellfish, et cetera, in the tidal zones. And the best way to prove it is to go out there and physically prove it. And you want to see birds feeding in the... So normally when the tide goes down, birds will rush in twice a day and feed to their heart's delight. Beautiful, healthy food, right? Now you're finding them at McDonald's, but you're not finding them in low tide because low tides are empty. And so normally the birds will pick up mussels and sea urchins and mollusks and snails and that, and periwinkles and whatever, and drop it on the sidewalks on the side of the road to crack it open so they can go down and have a quick... And, all of those sidewalks and roads along the shoreline should be littered with broken shells. They've been doing this for thousands of years, dropping them on the rocks to break them open, right? And they're empty. There's nothing on the sides of the roads But it's even better to go out and at low tide, you're only dodging along the coastline, and record no birds feeding in the tide zone. And so there should be lots of these little tiny sandpipers and stuff like that hanging out. And you would see them like an incredible coordinated flocks of them where they would move symmetrically, thousands of them, all moving in unison. Yeah, that's missing. And so this is super important. What we discovered today was that the migratory species didn't show up. And that's undeniable because the rocks should be stained. Now, at the very point of land, I can't remember the name of the rock, there was one rock there, a single rock, that has some excrement on it. So it's really weird, right? At those places, these are very special spots where you normally would be very crowded, multiple species will crowd into these areas. And we have footage from a couple of years ago where we seen that. Now we're not seeing it at all. It's gone. Just like my buddy yesterday telling me there's no insects in the farmers' fields, and it blew him away this year. He still can't wrap his mind around it. Because he basically ignores Fukushima, doesn't mean nothing to him, right? But for him to say there's no insects means there's no insects. It was a startling, and that was right at the beginning of the phone call. Because you got to appreciate, it's hard to appreciate that radiation is actually real and the harm that's caused by it, and the significance of the busting up the food chain is very difficult for a lot of people to comprehend it. Let's close the poll up. That's all I got at midnight. I'm burnt out. I'll be okay tomorrow night. Tomorrow we're going to get that motor working perfect. That's the plan tomorrow. Go out and prove that and go out and do the surveys to get a real, if the weather's safe, to go out and get the baseline again. We need to get that low tide desperately punched in. And so on Thursday, if not, on Thursday it's supposed to be 18 or 20 degrees here. I'll come back to the poll in a second. On Thursday it's going to be 18 or 20 degrees and sunshine. Which means we're basically, summer's finally starting here and there's nothing out there. We're way late in the game. We are way down the rabbit hole. This is not good news. But we got to verify it to quantify it, right? We got to go and do. We got to do the work. And so hopefully I'm wrong, but it doesn't look like I'm wrong. Should we stop wasting time on stupid small modular reactors and fusion, none of which exist, and concentrate on geothermal energy because it's easy? It's easy. See, I remembered. Maybe tomorrow night's poll will be the same thing, but because it's easy. Just for badness. Just because I can be a bastard to the nuclear industry too. So we're going to end the poll on 98% yes, 2% nay. So good night, everybody. Hugs for, we'll see everybody tomorrow night. I have some video that I didn't import tonight. I forgot to. But I'll put that in there tomorrow night. And plus I'll be shooting video tomorrow. If the weather's not good to go out in a boat, I'm going to go down to the coastline and do it on foot. I need to get a baseline to prove first, right? So now's the time to do it. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Dana and Asana, for moderating. We appreciate that so much. And I know you don't have to, but it's only because you're there that they don't show up. See? They see you there, so they know better, right? I'm burnt out myself. It's been a hellish day. And I got sick of backing the boat up or truck up to the trailers, getting out, checking, adjusting, and because my yard, my driveway is a really weird one. I'm actually tortured every time. The hardest part is hooking the trailer and the boat up, and because we got two trailers, right, and we're gonna start using the other one soon too. I'm drove nuts. So I went and picked up today a wireless backup camera and installed it. I just feel better right away. I'm not afraid now or I'm not lazy. I don't have any excuses not to hook the trailer up all of a sudden. I feel good about it, and that should get us more activity. Good night, everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Look like the censorship has gone batshit crazy. And it's because they're planning on starting the dumping in the ocean and they want me gone. The only resistance, real effective resistance, is educational programs. Not every one of my shows are going to be great because I have bad days too, right? Like tonight's pretty rough. It's been a long, difficult day. But as long as I get a show out there, at least that's another black eye for the nuclear industry minimum. And I'm not going to hit the hammer or nail on the head every time. Yeah, I got drones, yeah. Okay, good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. And I put the backup camera right by the trailer hitch. All I want to see is the trailer hitches connecting. And see everybody tomorrow night. Take care, folks. Okay, see everybody tomorrow night. If you made this far, consider giving us a thumbs up. Take care, folks.